I'm thrilled to have the honor to have one of the highlights here today in the studio now this morning. He is a renowned leadership expert, an optimist, a New York Times best-selling author of 4 books, a brilliant mind. Of course, I'm talking about Simon Sinek.
Thank you very much.
Simon, welcome.
Thanks for having me.
This is the second time we meet.
It is,
We met
indeed.
4 years ago. I know you're going to talk about your forthcoming book, The Infinite Game, on stage. I don't really want to, delve too much into that. But I did listen to an interview, and I thought it was interesting because you said the reality of the infinite game is that you're only competing with yourself. And I thought that was such a great quote. Could you just sort of elaborate a bit on that?
Yeah, I mean, in the infinite game, there's no finish line. There's no such thing as a winner. There's no such thing as winning business, for example. And so to start the day saying I'm going to beat my competition based on what metrics, based on what time frame, it actually creates more problems for an organization. But there's still a competition, and the only true competitor in the infinite game is yourself. How do we do better this year than we did last year? How do we make everything that we're doing better? Not because we're trying to outdo someone else, but we're trying to outdo ourselves.
And do you think that's going to require like a mindset shift? Because in a sense, it sort of reverses everything that we might have been learned from an early stage, that it's more about competitiveness and, comparison with others.
100%. I mean, that's exactly what I'm preaching, which is we have to change our mindset for the game in which we're actually playing, not the game we think we're playing. You can't show up, with a basketball to play football. It's the wrong rules.
Yeah.
So you can train all you want, but you're going to not do well. Well, imagine if we're training for a finite game, but the game we're actually playing is infinite. Yeah. It doesn't go well.
And I want to take us back because we all know, presumably, that you are the man who popularized why, and that became, the third most seen TED Talk ever. And then you sort of updated that with the interview on millennials in the workplace that I think, broke the internet. And I think you have now over 200 million viewers. And I was thinking, integrating why and purpose and millennials and taking a perspective, how are companies and corporations actually doing when we look at, purpose, why, retaining and gaining talent and so forth?
I think the fact that I have a career, I'm embarrassed that I have a career. I talk about trust and cooperation. There should be no demand for my work. But the fact that I have a career means that there's an opportunity, that there is demand for these things. And I think for the leaders with the courage to challenge the way business has been done for the past 30 years, they're seeing a lot of success. There is no millennial problem. The problem we have is we have a leadership vacuum. We have a leadership problem in the world in too many businesses. The businesses that are well led have no issue with their millennials. Every generation has its advantages and its own disadvantages. That's normal. But I think what we have too much of is bad leadership, where people don't feel inspired to come to work. They don't feel safe when they're there, and they don't feel fulfilled when they come home at the end of the day. That is because of leaders. It's not because of the job. It's not because of what the company makes. There's some pretty unromantic companies. They're not in tech, that are amazing places to work. I visited a company on the outskirts of Washington D.C. They make aggregate, quarries. They smash rocks for a living. That's what they do. And yet I met people who love their jobs and love each other and love coming to work. So there's nothing glamorous about that. So it's really not about the product, it's about the leadership.
So let's sort of dive in more into that, because we talk a lot. I mean, I host a lot of conferences and symposiums, and everybody's talking about, leadership and the future of leadership. So having you here, can we sort of dive into this, which at the moment, is not a problem, it is a solution, but it's as if leaders don't have the tools or the know-how or the mindset at the moment. So could you just sort of take us on that journey? What are the traits? What are the components that are needed?
Well, I think one of the biggest challenges is that leadership is a skill. It's a learnable, teachable, practicable skill. And if we don't teach people the skill, they won't know how to do it. When somebody is junior in their job, we give them tons of training how to do their job. Of course. Otherwise, they won't be able to do it. And if they're really good at their job, we'll promote them. And eventually, they'll be promoted to a position where they now are responsible for the people who do the job they used to do. But we don't teach people how to lead. We just promote people because they were good at the other job. And so we get managers and not leaders because we don't teach people how to lead. We're not teaching them how to lead at school. We're not teaching them how to lead in business school. And so it's left to the companies themselves to have to teach leadership because people are just ill prepared. Like I said, it's like being a parent. Everybody has the capacity to be a leader. Doesn't mean we all want to be leaders, and doesn't mean we all should be leaders. We all have the capacity for it. And it's not about the promotion. Having the kid takes 5 minutes. Raising the kid takes decades. It's a lifestyle to choose the choice to become a parent. It's not the promotion, that takes 5 minutes. It's the lifestyle of becoming a leader that I think most people are unaware of when they accept the responsibility.
So what are the traits that make a good leader? Is it sort of more shifting toward the soft skills, or is it having more 360 degree of both having tech and knowing sort of every part of the organization?
Yeah, so I hate the term soft skills because there's nothing soft about them. They're human skills. They're human skills.
And check that.
And leadership is about human skills.
So true.
There is no correlation between how good you are at the job and how good a leader you are. Because one is about doing the job and one is about creating a space in which others are good at the job. The best leaders have high EQ. The best leaders understand the human skills. They're good at listening. They're good at empathy. They're good at patience. They're good at creating a space in which they can help other people feel accountable. And if they fall or falter, they say, good, try again. They believe in people. They practice trust, which means they trust first. They don't ever say, give me a reason why I should trust you. Leaders must bestow trust. It's the risk of trust. So all of these things require risk and patience, and arbitrary timeframes don't help, because you can't predict those kinds of results. You can't predict how long it takes to make a friend. You can't predict how long it takes to fall in love. Well, you can't predict how long trust and cooperation develop inside a company. And so the number one characteristic I think required to be a leader is courage. It's incredibly hard. It's sometimes thankless. It's sometimes lonely. Sometimes the results cannot meet arbitrary deadlines. All of these things require risk, and all of these things require courage.
And I'm thinking, because a lot of the time, just sticking a little bit more to leadership, a lot of the time you also refer to leadership in the army, where people might have one perspective that it's very much, but you sort of say that it is actually the perfect way to transition into leadership in the corporate world.
Well, the military has very good examples of good leadership, and they have very good examples of bad leadership. I think the private sector does as well. I think what makes the military a good case study for me is that the lessons are exaggerated. That because very often the stakes really are life and death, that all of the lessons of good leadership are much easier to see. In business, it's not life and death, but all of leadership is exactly the same, maybe harder to see. What's very funny is we make movies about bad leaders. Right? Where somebody is screaming and barking orders and telling everybody what to do, and they swoop in and save the day. It makes a great movie. It makes a terrible organization. And so if we're modeling ourselves after leaders in the movies, we're off to a bad start. Good leaders, they don't make movies about good leaders because they're boring. Because everything kind of works fine, and everybody's taking care of each other, and you can walk in and say, where's the boss? And they go, oh, I don't know. I'm not even sure she came in today. And so we tend to make movies about bad leaders. I think the military, for me, has been a remarkable education. It's an incredibly human place. I've cried with more people in uniform than I've ever cried with in suits. I've hugged more people in uniform than I've ever hugged people in suits. It's a very, very human organization. The Marine Corps talks about the intangibles as core to what makes Marines strong. They talk about love as core to what makes the Marine Corps strong. You would never talk about those words. You would never use the word love to describe a great organization in business. Yet the Marine Corps, I would argue, is much more powerful than most businesses. And like I said, the intangibles is what we would call human skills.
And because what I like also is you talk a lot about sort of human relationship, human connection, human skills, and the importance to also integrate that with, the emerging technology and so forth. We're more connected than ever, but as humans somehow more disconnected than ever. And I also know that you sort of correlated that to the healthcare system, where you said, there's so many people there working, caring for patients, but they're in their turn are not being cared for.
Correct.
And that's why the system is broken. And it sort of felt like a fundamental view of how the world is also working within corporates. How can we sort of shift and try to tackle this, with the really endorsing a good culture, having employee satisfaction, retaining talent, and so forth?
Well, we have to, there's multiple things we have to do. It's the law of diffusion is king here. We're looking for early adopters. I'm out there preaching what leadership has to look like, offering some tools. And it's the early adopters. It's the ones with the courage to say, I'm going to do it differently than the norm. Just because it's normal doesn't mean it's correct. It just means it's normal.
Yeah.
And so it's the forward-thinking leaders who say, I believe in the theory. I believe in putting people before numbers. I believe in good leadership and creating a space in which people can work to their natural best. And the more of those early adopters we get, eventually we will tip the whole system and completely change the way business is done. And remember, this is not a new idea. Business and leadership has really been in decline for the past 30, 40 years since the late 1970s. There was no such thing as mass layoffs to balance the books on an annualized basis prior to the 1980s. There was no such thing as shareholder supremacy as a theory where we prioritize the wants and needs of the shareholders over the customer and the employee. That did not exist prior to the 1970s. Rank and yank, all of these ridiculous ideas where you promote the top 10% and fire the bottom 10%. These are all ridiculous ideas that were really promoted in the 80s and 90s that have become normalized today, but they've come at great expense. We've had multiple stock market crashes in the past 30, 40 years. We've had the decline of trust. We've had the decline of innovation. We've had the decline of cooperation. We've even seen the decline of the lifespan of a business.
Yep.
In the 1950s, the average lifespan of a business was 60 years. Today, it's 18, right? So it's come, and the economy is not what it used to be. So I would argue that those systems were perfectly fine for the short term. They were finite-minded, and quite frankly, it's time for us to reject that thinking and embrace what capitalism really is and should be, which is people-focused.
Yeah.
What Adam Smith envisioned, it was much more people-focused than what we have today.
And one can feel there is a transition more to that, and also impact with profit and so forth.
It's slowly getting there. The momentum is on our side.
And as time is ticking, I just wanted to ask, because Simon Sinek is all about purpose and mission and why. So what is Simon Sinek's purpose and mission and why? What's your own purpose and mission?
So I have a very clear vision of the world I would like to live in. I imagine a world in which the vast majority of people wake up every single morning inspired, feel safe at work, and return home fulfilled at the end of the day. And I've devoted my entire professional life to try and preach what that world could look like and do everything I can to try build it.
So just to summarize for all the leaders and all the entrepreneurs who are here and also online, what are the 3 key insights they should think about to try and transition into that vision?
Number 1, people come first. Number 2, have the courage to do the right thing rather than the expedient thing. And number 3, embrace an infinite mindset. It's about thinking way beyond any fixed time frames.
Well, we look forward to listening to you on stage to hear more about the infinite mindset. Simon, thank you so much. Give a round welcome of applause to Simon Sinek. Thank you.